Hi friends, Russell here. You got here is the engine, 4-liter that we're going to tear down and prepare to build the 4.6-liter stroker out of. I'll link the first video up here where we talked about kind of the plans. Today's video, we're going to start tearing this thing down and get it ready for the head removal to get the head off to the shop. Don't know how far we're going to go today, but at a minimum we're going to get the intake and the exhaust off and maybe start taking off some of the ancillaries on the front. Don't want to take up too much time on the video today. Just want to kind of show kind of how the progress is going to go. So I'll move the camera in and kind of get it closer so you can see what's going to be going on here. All right, so the first thing we got to do is get the fuel rail out of here, and it's held on by what, 1, 2, 3, like 4, 5, 6 10mm bolts. And as we pull the fuel rail off, the injectors will come with it. I'm going to need a deep. So actually the first thing we've got to pull off is the throttle cable bracket. The throttle cable and the cruise control, and so the throttle cable would go here, the first hole, cruise control would go in the second hole, and then the automatic transmission kick down would go in the third hole. Of course, when we put this all into the CJ, we're only using the first hole. So the bracket's out of the way. And it's just 4 10mm holding the fuel rail in. Tug on it. That's it. Fuel rail's out. We'll set this on the bench. All right, the other thing I'm going to take off of this manifold, primarily because I'm going to be replacing it anyway, is this intake throttle body. So we'll take it off as a unit. And same thing, it's 4 10mm bolts holding it in. Alright, that's all there is to it, taking the throttle body off. These are actually really easy to replace, but let's talk about some items on here. So obviously you've got the butterfly. Alright, throttle cable attaches here, opens your throttle up. So attached to the throttle body You've got throttle position sensor. You've got what we call the IAC, the idle air controller, and then the MAP sensor, manifold absolute pressure. Some of the earlier versions of this engine, the MAP sensor was not attached to the throttle body. It was actually mounted on the firewall, and there was a hose that went to it. So we'll save all these sensors. As far as I know, they're good. So we'll pull them off and maybe use them for later. Now, one of the things I am going to do, so all the bolts, I'll put them in a Ziploc so I don't lose them. They hold the throttle and the fuel rail on. We'll set that aside. So, intake manifold. It's 14 millimeter bolts holding it on. There's 4 on the top, and then if I remember right, 4 on the bottom that are, you know, and some of them are actually grabbing both the intake and the exhaust. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to pull those off first. And once I pull the intake off, you'll be able to see where these bolts come through and how they attach. There's no sense of me moving the camera, getting a flashlight, showing y'all exactly where they're at. If you look underneath the intake manifold, you can see them. Now, a lot of motors, other engines, once you've got the bottoms loosened and the tops out, you can lift the intake manifold off. The Jeep 4-liter actually has locating dowels on the head, and you'll see them once we get this off. So you actually have to remove, physically remove the lower bolts all the way, because this manifold's going to pull off this way. So what I'm going to do is hand tighten one bolt in there to just hold it. I'll go back down underneath and remove these all the way out. That's it. That's the intake manifold. We'll set this aside. We'll start pulling that header off. And you can see, this is a better one, I think, where that joint intake exhaust bolt would go. So there's one here, one here, and one here. And it's a 14mm head, big thick concave washer. So now the only thing holding the header on is the two nuts on studs at either end and the center bolt. So we're going to take the ends off first. And I'm going to save this header because I may have a customer that needs it. So I'm not going to use it. And the header's off. We'll go hang this on the wall. So the same thing, I'm going to put all my manifold bolts into a Ziploc so I don't lose them. I may not reuse the bolts, but I will reuse the concave washers. Set those aside. So let's see what else we're going to do today. Take that gasket off. Wasn't leaking. Alright, so since we're working on the left side of the engine, I'm going to go ahead and pull this motor mount off. And we'll actually turn it around and we'll go ahead and get the other motor mount off just so we've got both motor mounts off and the bolts and everything are together. Alright, and the same thing, motor mounts on that side and this side they're 14mm, and there's one Torx bolt, so I'll have to get my Torx set out for it. So it is a T45. There we go. So we got the mount out, and I'll place these two mounts and all the bolts together. All right, while we're on this side, we'll go ahead and take all the ignition components out, 'cause we don't need those. Huh. All right, this is where I get on a soapbox about spark plugs real quick. Champion plug, and the ceramic shattered when I pulled it out. This is why I like to use NGK plugs. I never have this happen with NGKs. So now we know why they took it to the junkyard. It's only got 180,000 miles on it, but it was running like crap. It was running like crap because they never changed the spark plugs. Folks, Jeep motors, inline sixes, spark plugs 30,000. Can't say it enough. I mean, they were never, ever changed. No wonder it ran like crap. Gee, same thing. And another one shattered. Garbage. All right, so next thing we're going to pull off, since we're working this right side of the motor, is we're going to get the whole coil bracket off. And I'll leave the wiring intact. I may save it and need it for something else. I won't necessarily need it for the CJ7, but I could end up using it somewhere else, so we'll hang on to this wiring. But I still got to get it off, so. If y'all remember on a previous video where I did a tune-up on a 4-cylinder TJ and we couldn't actually see where the coil's at, and I'll put a link for that video up here. This is what that coil bracket looks like. So you can actually see how the coil mounts to it. The bolt goes through and the nut on the back side. We couldn't get the camera down there tight enough to show it, but it's the same coil bracket. It's just mounted on the back side of the block on that 4-cylinder. All right, so let's work on, let's get this AC bracket off. So both the AC bracket and the alternator bracket for an XJ are bolted to the block and bolted through the timing cover. So I'm going to pull the block bolts out first, then I'll reposition so you can see, and we'll pull the timing cover bolts out. And then what I'll end up doing is putting the timing cover bolts back in for now. And I'm going to leave the distributor on as is, just with the cap to protect the internals for now. Because I'm not ready to tear into that. Get rid of our garbage Champion spark plugs. Guys, I can't say it enough. If you've got a Jeep motor, you have to change the spark plugs. And for the love of Pete, stop using Champion plugs. All right, we got all the side bolts out. I'm going to turn this a little bit here. And now you see a little bit better. So there's bolts in the side into the block to hold the AC bracket on, as well as one bolt through the timing cover to the back side. So that's the next one we're going to pull off. All right, there's the AC bracket. The AC would mount here, and then this here is for the mechanical fan used on a Cherokee. So we'll set this aside, and I'm going to put this bolt back in because I want to keep my timing cover bolts together. All right, and then the same thing, for the alternator, you've got the main portion of the bracket that's aluminum, and then there's an outer tension portion that's steel that's bolted to it, and it sandwiches it together for the front side. The sandwich bolts are 14 millimeter. I should say nuts. And if you've ever changed an alternator in a Cherokee in the car, you know how much of a bugger these bolts are. One of them's got to be different. There's that bracket. Now, just like some of the other parts, I'm going to put all the bolts for the components together. So I'll run these 2 bolts back in. And then we'll set the bracket back on it and start 2 of the nuts just to keep it all together. We'll set this aside. Once again, I'm going to start a bag for all my side of the block bolts. So, hate those, we'll go ahead and pull it off. Now I'm not starting to take the valve cover off, I'm just getting this plastic spark wire holder thingy out of the way because it's broken and I don't like them anyway. I'm not a fan of engine bay pieces that are there simply to make it pretty. And that's all this is. So we'll pull that off and toss it away. Alright. So short of taking the oil filter housing adapter off, oil pressure sensor and the distributor out, we're kind of done on this side of the block, at least while it's right side up. We're going to spin it around, we'll take the motor mounts or the pulley bracket off on the other side and we'll be done with this for today. So it's kind of similar to the alternator brackets. It bolts directly into the block as well as has 2 bolts that mount into the water pump. And they are all 14s. So we'll take the fronts off. The side one. All right, there it is. And we'll so the 96 Cherokee, 97 Wrangler, use the same kind of belt tensioner. So Cherokee and Wranglers use the same type. Okay. It has an adjustment bolt that runs all the way through. So as I loosen the bolt, it loosens the tension on the pulley. You can see that pulley moving down. The way it works. Threaded keeper bolt comes through for the pulley. So the way you adjust the belts on these is tighten, adjust the tension, and then you tighten the pulley down, and then it can't move. Ingenious and simple. The later versions of the 4 liter used an automatic tensioner, so a little bit different. I think I'm going to stop there for tonight. We've got the manifolds off. We've got the ancillary brackets off. The excess ignition stuff off the other side of the motor's off. That's all I'm going to do today. Kind of short video. If you like this content, go ahead and like, hit subscribe, hit that bell icon for future notifications. Next episode, we'll probably timing set off, get the valve cover off, disassembled, and probably get the head off. That'll be the next video, tentatively. Once again, if you like this content, go ahead and hit like, hit subscribe, hit that bell icon for future notifications, and as always, more to follow.